a female welfare officer. I'm a third year classicist, so I've done 2 years of collections, I guess. Yeah.
And Elliot?
Hi, I'm Elliot. I'm the accommodation officer and I'm a third year PPEist, but I have rusticated, so I've actually done more collections than I should have already. So I've got plenty of experience in the area.
Amazing. Okay, so in terms of like answering, I've mentioned this to the guys who are speaking. I've got like a brief list of questions that I think like I'd like us to cover. And then they can feel free to go off on any like little tangents that they want to say. In terms of answering order, we'll kind of go with what we just did in terms of introducing ourselves. But if you want to jump in among us, just jump in for now. And everyone else, we can like have a bit of more general discussion in the Q&A bit. But we'll just talk for the first maybe half an hour, maybe shorter, maybe longer, depends if we get inspired while we're speaking. So my first thing that I just wanted to say, because this is what I've seen all over Oxfest, which I know isn't the most reputable news source, but you can gauge the vibe from there, is from all of us, what is your opinion for your subject and for the Corpus tutors? Because you shouldn't believe what you hear from any other college, because every college does collections very differently. For your subject, from your tutors, maybe anecdotal stories from friends, how much do collections matter? So my first input for that, to get the ball rolling, is not that much for psychology. Like, Robin is lovely for any I think maybe a couple of psych students are on here. And basically how he takes them is as good exam practice. So it's kind of like, I treat them the same way as at school if I was doing like, maybe not my mocks for like a big exam, but like, you know, like an end of term test or something that's like, it doesn't matter hugely. You're not gonna be like get a bad grade at the end of the school year because of it, but it's quite good practice to see what you've learned. And most of you probably, the scientists, maybe we have exams in like second year, or if you're doing psych, you've got prelims this term, which might seem a bit scary, but again, they're nothing to worry about really. You'll do a lot better than you think. But again, so collections is just really good practice for that. If you do badly, your tutor might like call you in and be like, right, let's figure out why this didn't go so well. It's like how can we help you to do better? And they can't do that unless you practice, which is why we need to do it in time conditions, because like you'd rather do it just once like this, have it be a bit of a stress, than have to force yourself to do like timed essays at home to get in the habit. So that's my experience of collections. A little bit stressful because you have to do it timed, but it doesn't matter that much in the end. You can always work it out. So you want to...
Okay, yeah, so from my point of view for maths, and I think this goes for most of the scientists, the tutors really don't mind what you get in your collection. It is there just for your reference and for their reference to see how you're doing, how things are going for you. I know collections for me were the first time I'd ever seen the style of question that the exams would be written in, because they tend to be quite different to problem sheet questions. You'll be able to find past prelims papers online, which is what they're most similar to, but there's no point really doing practice exams now before you've done your collections, because you generally won't have a mark scheme to see whether you're right. So the good thing about collections is after you've done them, you go through them with your tutors, and your tutors will explain everything to you, anything you're not sure about, anything that doesn't make sense. This is a really good chance to sort of check your understanding, and if you don't understand something, then you've got a meeting with your tutors to be able to ask them, how do I do this? Because most people will have lots of questions like that. I know I definitely did. And so it's a very good learning experience. I don't think it's anything to really stress about too much. You get practice of exam sort of timings, what the questions look like, but there's nothing too scary about them because your tutors aren't going to do anything if you don't do very well in them. At worst, they might say, have another go at these questions now that we've had a meeting, and see how you do with them now, see if you've actually learned something from it. But generally, there is no penalty for not doing well in them. They're just there for reference for you and your tutors.
Okay, so from my perspective, for law, Obviously fresher year is mods year, so you do this set of collections and then it's mods after that. So I would say the tutors treated those mods, not mods, sorry, the tutors I can't speak. The tutors treated those collections a little more seriously than my next ones in second year, because the collections were kind of a setup for a kind of indicator of how you're going to do in mods. It didn't actually work out like that for me, so I wouldn't I wouldn't listen. I ended up doing okay in the collections, but really well in mods. So yeah, I think you need to just, I think it's better to treat them, as people have said, as practice. And I'd say then in second year, my collections were definitely less stressful. I myself treated them less important because we'd had mods, but I'd say the tutors were a bit more lenient with that one, and especially in this time with COVID and everything, you know, the tutors can't say enough how much they know people are struggling and people are finding it really, really difficult to work and to be motivated. And so, you know, if there was ever a collection where you didn't do that great, it's understandable, and the tutors will understand. And if you need to reach out to tutors and just talk to them about that, then you can definitely do, or a student, you know, and they can help you speak to a tutor. So I would just say, yeah, especially now, collections probably mean the least they've ever meant. And for law, just on the resit thing, for law we have to resit if we get less than a 2-1, but I don't think that's a subject wide thing. I'm not sure, but other people can give an opinion on that.
I'd be echoing what Ryan said about collections being the first time I'd seen an exam paper. So for classics, you'll have an Iliad one and your language collection. The language collection really doesn't matter because you won't be doing a language paper in the style of the collection. Like the one that we had was a lot of like parsing and kind of vocab stuff that isn't exactly what the language like mods will be like, and you've got like a year and a half for that anyway, when you'll have like other preparation. And seeing the Iliad paper for the first time was really helpful because it's very different to the essays you've been doing. Exam essays are really different from tutorial essays, and it gives you a kind of indicator of kind of questions I'll be asking, and like almost just gives you more like revision material, because you'll see lots of different topics and you can start building up like a foundation of lots of different topics that you have bits of information about, so that when it comes to the actual thing, you'll have had lots of practice in like dealing with various themes of various texts. Again, yeah, Constanza is so chill. She really doesn't mind what you get in them. I like, from personal experience, I had like a bit of a panic before my collections at the start of second year, and she was very chill. She even said I could do them in my own time, like during term, like there wasn't, because it really is just practice for you. Yeah, we don't see, like as far as I know, we don't have a policy of resetting collections. It's probably like one of the only ways you'll get to experience what being in an exam is like. And it was really, in the same way that mocks at school are designed for that, it's really helpful to like sit in a hall with lots of other students, like just to learn the format of how Oxford exams work before you jump into them, because you just won't have had that practice. So yeah, but don't take them too seriously.
Yeah, and I think that's really important to emphasize that you can contact your tutor if there's any kind of problems. You know, I used to really, really stress about collections, and it's taken me quite a few to kind of get used to not stressing about them, because ultimately the tutors are there to help, and they're not going to have a go at you if you don't do as well as you think you could have. I've had subjects where I've been performing really well and done terrible collections, and I've had subjects where I haven't been performing very well and ended up doing a really good collection. So tutors understand that there's this kind of that isn't necessarily reflective of your complete performance, but at the same time, they do think it's a really good opportunity for you to, like people have been saying, see the exam paper. And I think from a PPE perspective, it's your first chance to see what each of the 3 subjects papers are going to be like. The politics paper is going to be entirely essays, and then you'll have logic as well, which will be quite different from any of your other exams. And then prelim micro, you kind of see what economics problem questions are like that you probably will have been seeing in your tutorial work. But I think it's very important to emphasize that if there's any kind of problem, if you're really worrying about your collections, you can reach out to your tutors, and they are flexible and they understand if you email them and you say, hi, I've been working really hard for this collection, but I really haven't slept well the night before, or I'm really worrying about it, so this might not be my best performance. And they'll say, that's totally fine. They'll probably still want you to give it a go, but they really do understand if you're not working at full capacity. And yeah, I think, like people say, especially because of COVID, they're not going to be too stressed about the results. You're not going to be looked down on in any way. It's more just good prep for prelims in however long, 4 or 5 months time, and a good chance for you to kind of consolidate all your notes and your knowledge from the last term and sit an exam on what you've been doing.
Yeah, I think that's exactly like the main thing that we're all saying, is it's just really good practice, and especially for like online exams, which probably most of us don't have that much experience with. I think like I've done 1 collection online at the beginning of Michaelmas, but that's it. And like, any of us who have like mods or prelims, everyone will have prelims at the end of the year, which we don't know, they might be online, they might be in person, we'll have to see. But people who have prelims and mods this term most likely going to be online. So it's good practice for that, just to see how it works. So again, like if it doesn't go well, it's the same thing if you think back to maybe your A-level mocks. So like I did IB, my mocks were awful, like just so bad. And I sat through my maths one and I just cried the entire time, and people like looking over being like, is she like, and I was just sobbing onto the page. That's not a joke. And then I handed it in and I didn't do well, obviously. But then the stuff that I did, like I got marks for some stuff. Like in my head, I was like, I haven't got anything, got nothing right. And I did get marks for some stuff. So that made me be like, oh, okay, I do understand some things. And then I just went over the stuff that I hadn't done well in. And then I did like fine in my actual thing. So again, if collections go badly, don't be like, my prelims are gonna be awful. Or, again, like Elliot said, like sometimes you can be doing really badly in a subject and then you do a really good collection, which is great. That's just encouraging, because maybe you're being more hard on yourself than you thought. And sometimes you can do really well and do really badly just because the paper was confusing or whatever. So I wouldn't worry about that. My next kind of question for us all, if you have something you want to share, is what not to do. I have one particular tip not to do. It's an anecdotal story. It's a bit embarrassing. But see some of my rowing kids on here, I tell my embarrassing stories every week, so it's nothing different to usual. Is my first collections. So myself and Anna, who does psychology with me, we were really stressing out about neurophys, as I'm sure any psychologist on here knows. It's pretty horrible. And so we were like, you know what we're going to do? So we'd done 2 collections on the Thursday, and they'd both been the like past paper from the year before. So we were like, solid, neurophys, we'll just stay up really late and learn essay plans for all of the questions on last year's. Like, we thought we'd absolutely cracked it. It was like 4 a.m. Some people had finished their like collections that day, and they were coming back from a night out, and they were like walking into my room drunk, and like me and Anna were sitting there like learning these essay plans, because we were like, guys, we're gonna absolutely smash it. And we walked in there in the morning and they told us to turn over the papers, and I literally looked up, and once again, I didn't start crying, but I'd nearly started crying because it was completely the wrong paper. I had not looked at any other topics. And there was, I cannot, like, and we'd suggested this to all of our there are 2 other people who do psychology with us. We'd been like, guys, cracked it, do this. They'd done the same thing. And we all like made eye contact across the room and we were like, shit. But then I didn't do extremely well, but I managed to like piece together some bits that I had known, some stuff from like another module. A lot of stuff I think like can be applied across modules in psych. I don't know if it's the same. I think a lot of STEM things might be the same. I'm not so sure about humanities, but like you might have stuff that in one module you really understand it. Maybe it could be the way a lecturer explained it. And then in the other one you just don't, but then you realize it's kind of the same concept. And I don't know if I'm explaining that very well, but that's what I'm saying is that I used some stuff we've been taught in psychology, which could be applied to neurophys, and constructed 3 essays, and I made it out alive, and I'm still at Oxford. So it's, you know, I was a bit sad about it, but that's it. So don't look up the past papers and think that you've cracked it, because you probably haven't. Sometimes they might do it. And also don't change your strategy based on the paper you've got on the Thursday. Like also if the paper on, you know, one day goes really badly, don't think you're screwed for the rest of them. Just be like, okay, tomorrow's a different day. We go again, we'll try it differently. Yeah, that's my fun story of what not to do. If anyone else has anything to share on that one.
Yeah, I also have a fun story of what not to do. Well, it's not that fun, it was really bad. But this was during actual mods, this happened, and they were online, and it was the first one. And obviously at the end you have to upload your paper, and basically I'd had this stress halfway through where I didn't know whether I was going to type it or write it, and I'd started typing. So that's another thing I would say, try and work out whether typing or writing is your thing, because it's really not a good thing to halfway through say, oh my god, I'm not a fast typer. So then I had to switch to writing. So obviously at the end I had to piece these 2 things together. So I had to scan all the writing and then put it with the Word document. So yeah, suffice to say it didn't go very well, and I was already stressed. So I'd probably left myself 10 minutes to do this, and basically the app that I had to scan everything broke. And it went really badly. It was very bad. I had to pay like £30 for a scanner app to try and get this in, and all the pictures I had were time stamped with the time to show I'd done it all within the exam, because then it was too big, so it wouldn't send. So basically it was 10 minutes after the exam had ended on the official mods, and I was like emailing everyone saying, please help me, I can't send you my paper. But anyway, it was all sorted out because I had timestamps on the photos to show I would finished in time. But my fun thing not to do is to work out how you're going to scan your paper if you're writing and send it in. Obviously with collections it doesn't matter as much because they're not official exams. You know, tutors will be really tutors are lenient with if you don't get it in straight on time because it's not real. But I would say just for your own peace of mind, because I was panicking so much, I would say work out whether you like to write or type, and work out how you're going to scan your paper just before, and give yourself a good amount of time to get it in case anything goes wrong, so you can email people and ask how for help. Yeah, so I would just say that's my one thing. And then also I was going to say, just with timing in general, I know timing is always an issue with exams. It's probably my major issue in exams. I think when you're at home as well, it doesn't quite feel like an exam. So I often just get really loose with my timings and say, oh, it's fine, this essay will be done in another 5 minutes. And then it's not. And you've really got to be strict with yourself and say, I'm moving on to the next essay. It's better to get something on every question than it is to get 3 really long, complex essays and then have nothing, or have something really you know, not detailed at the end. It's better to have a constant kind of a good overall performance, I would say, on the exam. And then my last thing would just be is not to worry. Again, I know we've just said it, to worry about doing an exam, because obviously this is the first time kind of you're doing one, so in this way. And I know for law, writing essay, the essay style you have to write is so different to any other essay. I didn't even do an essay based subject at A level. I did 3 sciences. So then to do law, I'm constantly learning the exam technique. So with mods, when I did my first collections, I'd only done 1 term at uni. I'd only started learning how to write essays, really. And so when I did collections, I did that, but then I had another full term before mods. So that was another full term to keep developing my exam technique, keep developing my essay technique. So I would say, really, I don't know how it is with other subjects, but especially with things like that, where you're learning how to write essays, you've still got another 6 to 8 weeks to kind of master it. So that my only other thing would be not to worry too much about your essays, because you're always developing. So it always gets better.
I also had the thing where my file size was too big, and I ended up having to upload it to Dropbox and then send a link to the Dropbox in, because it just wouldn't send. But I'd say, like, I would recommend writing over typing, because it generally is faster. But that means that you do need to figure out how to use the scanning app, practice in advance, because if it's your first time using it, it can be a bit chaotic.
Yeah.
And I said, I would say, especially for PPE, for the economics and the philosophy, and I think this is probably true in science subjects as well, is at least attempt every question. If you see a question and you just have no clue how to answer it, at least give it a go, because then you at least have this kind of framework you can work off where you need it to, go right, rather than just leaving it completely blank. I think tutors don't really like it if you just leave it completely blank, because they think that you just haven't tried it at all. And even if you're like looking at it and really stressing and like, I have no idea how to answer this, at least give it a go, because then when it comes to looking over the collections, you can figure out, where you did go wrong, rather than just not having anything to work off.
Yeah, I agree with the scanning app. Make sure you have a practice beforehand, and I would try to do some very basic maths with it, and like scan yourself 4 sides and work out how big the file size is. And if it's too big, then you can go into the settings and reduce the dimensions of your scans, so that if you're going to be scanning, say you think you're going to write about 20 pages, then, or if you're going to scan 20 pages, work out that it's less than whatever percentage. I don't think it should be as bad for collections, because you should be able to send them in different ways. It's not going to be through the official site, but it's worth having a practice anyway. And the other thing is, make sure you attempt every question that you're meant to do. So in a lot of science papers, read the front of them, because quite often you'll have a paper that says you must answer 2 questions from section A and 2 questions from section B, and there's actually 3 questions in each section, so you get to pick them. And if you don't read that first, you're going to try and do 6 questions in the time you're meant to do 4, and that does not work. I can tell you that, because I know someone who did make that mistake and tried to answer far too many questions and left them all very incomplete. And the other thing, make sure you are spending the right amount of time on each question. Split your time up, especially in papers where you've got, say, 4 20-mark questions to do. Try and spend a quarter of your time on each one. And if you get stuck somewhere, move on and come back to it, which is the same technique you'll have been told all the way through GCSE and A level, but it still applies now. There's no point spending a quarter of your time staring at something that, when you could be getting half the marks on the next question in that time. So it's definitely worth trying to keep moving forward and then come back if you've got time at the end. But don't worry if you've not answered everything, because especially in these style of exams, you're not really especially in science, it's unlikely you're going to get an answer to every single part of every single question. Like, a good mark is sort of 50 to 70% of the marks quite often.
I think, I don't know if this is like, do Corpus like recommend a scanning app? Because the one I use is Office Lens, which has worked pretty well for me. So if you need like a one to use, then that's the one I use. In terms of like things not to do, my tutors are constantly telling me to stop leaving blanks in my collections because I like freeze and then I just don't do anything. Whereas it's actually more helpful to do something. So if like for essays, you often kind of surprise yourself with what you end up writing, because you might go into it thinking, oh, I've revised like women in the Iliad and I'm going to talk about these topics, but then actually you find a question that's a bit different and more interesting, maybe because you haven't like rehearsed it. And so I found that the essay questions that I didn't expect to answer often are the ones that answer better. And also, like, if you run out of time to write a full essay, like a plan is better than nothing. I've done that a couple of times when I've run out of time. I just had like 10 minutes to do my third essay, and so I just wrote a plan, and like you get marks for it. It's not going to be as much as a full essay, but it's better than leaving it blank. And yeah, Constance is very much like just try. You might surprise yourself with stuff that you didn't know you had in your brain that you didn't necessarily revise, but is somewhere around. And like if you just get some ideas down, like some general points to answer a question, it's better than like not having anything at all. Same with the translation. I think in my first collection I left like a ton of blanks. I just like missed out words because I didn't know what they were, but wrote down the ones I did know. Even that's helpful. And yeah, like try not to build it up to be bigger than it is, because for me anyway, that's like quite dangerous, because then I sort of freeze and I don't do anything. Whereas if you like can break it down into like, it doesn't matter that much, it's not real, like maybe I'm not so good at this section, but I can do this section. Like it's better than freezing and panicking and just like saying, like writing the whole thing off, which is something that I tend to do with stuff. But so yeah, like try not to, it really like isn't the end of the world if it goes badly.
And one thing that's reminded me of is try not to ramble. I know my tutors really hate it when I do this. It's easy when you see a question, I think especially for politics, and you just have all of the knowledge about, you know, this entire subject, and you just want to get it all down to show, you know, I have all of this knowledge. Because in an essay you're writing for a tutorial, you know, you need to hit 2,000 words or whatever, and I'm sure that's true for other subjects as well. And so you're trying to think about all these different arguments and put in as much info as you can. An essay, you only have like an hour per essay for politics, and you don't want to, you can't physically fit all of the information you know about the entire topic down on the page. And it's much better to just think about the core points to answer the question and work through them. You know, I remember my old tutor always used to say, what is the kind of core message of your answer, and don't just go on this really long tangent to show, oh, I know all about this topic, if it's not relevant to the question, because it's not really going to get you any marks, and it's going to waste your time.
I think on that, it's really worth doing a plan for your questions. I know this is not what not to do, but what to do is to do a plan, I would say. Even if it's obviously you don't have too much thinking time, but taking 5 minutes even just before each one to work out what points you're going to hit is just really helpful, because it means that if you run out of steam on one point, you can just move to the next point. I star all over my essays, so they're always like, I've got nothing on this other point, so I'll go to the next one, and then I'll realize I'll just remember something, so then I'll have to star it and put it at the end, which is what I used to do at GCSE all the time. But yeah, so I would say just trying to work out what points you want to hit and what's relevant and irrelevant, because a lot of, especially for law, a lot of it is what is relevant. You know, that is the main thing that is we do essays for, really, is, well, to work out technique and how to argue, but mainly to work out what's relevant to the question. So yeah, I
think with a lot of essays it kind of translates into STEM subjects a lot. It's kind of weird if you're writing a STEM essay, or probably things like law and like politics, not saying anything else is rambly, like as Elliot said, like rambling is a big like, but sometimes I find it really confusing to be like, how do I write an essay about like a neuron? Like what? Who does that? Why would you want to read that? But like they just want it to be concise, which is just a word that my tutor uses all the time. But like it has been drummed into my head now that like they would rather genuinely read a shorter essay. Like it's not more impressive to write a longer essay. Absolutely not. Like some of the best essays I've written are like probably the shorter ones, because I was more concise. There was just less waffling going on there. Like for science subjects, if you're talking about like a particular thing that you're describing, like use scientific terminology. You don't need to like make it sound like a story, because your tutor is a scientist and they want to read it, that they can like really quickly digest the information and then like move on to the next bit. They just want to see that you understand it. They don't want to see you kind of make it pretty, so to speak. That would be my kind of tip for science essays, which I think just can be a bit confusing to get the balance right. Like obviously you want to have good grammar and make it flow, but you can do that by just making your, like Meg said, using a plan, making sure your points are relevant and like the argument is logical, and then everything else will flow from there if you just put the info down. And I have another what not to do. Beware with online exams of sharing essays or like notes with your friends. Not saying don't share notes, but if you're typing, try and like don't copy and paste from your old essays. Your tutors will know. Like in my collections last term, I used a sentence from a prelims essay that I was like, he's never gonna know, like that, no way. And he literally wrote, he wasn't like, you've done this, but he was like, this sounds a bit like you at prelims, Gaby. And I was like, oh, so don't do it. Also, I have a friend who literally copied and pasted, this was really stupid, but he literally copied and pasted an essay from someone in the year above and obviously got done for plagiarism. He's still here, so even if you do that, there are ways around it, but you know, you get put on academic probation, which means like you just can't slip up. I'm not saying that's a good idea, but again, like that just came out like I was being like, well, don't worry guys, we'll sort it out. But yeah, like just watch out for that, like watch out for sharing notes and essays that are like typed, because it's so easy to just copy. Like we had, for example, a tutor made us do our short notes, which are like not mini essays, but like, you know, like a paragraph on a Google Doc. And it was so tempting for us to like go and paste that into our essays. But like someone did it just because it was useful, like a little sentence or two. And it was like, she was like, you just plagiarized what someone said. So you might not be meaning to do it, might not be malicious, you might like think that it's fine, but you know, don't even like type it copying. Even if you don't copy and paste it, they'll still notice, I'd say. And another thing I'm just going to segue into is we've talked about like what, you know, even if you do awfully, it's absolutely fine, and it is, but also you don't have to get a first. Like you don't have to do amazingly either. And I was reminded by that when Elliot was speaking, like you don't have to be the best. This isn't like your one and only chance to show why you deserve to be at Oxford with, you know, I'm going to open the discussion if anyone wants to talk about imposter syndrome, which I'm sure is kicking in right before collections. But yeah, one, you all deserve to be here because like I had this before prelims. I was like talking to my tutor and I was just so sad and tired because I was just working myself to the bone. And he was like, Gaby, like, are you all right? Because you look a bit peaky, mate. And I was like, no, I just don't think I can do this. And then he was really nice. And all he said was, I chose you, so you can. And then I like walked out and that was it. And I like always remember that. And that's the same for all of you guys. It's not like every individual, like, oh, only this person is good enough to be here. All of your tutors, out of however many people they saw, however many applications they probably had to read, chose you, so you can. It's just a matter of like working with them to figure out how to show that best. That's all it is. And yeah, that's what I'd also say about collections, and before passing it on to anyone else, is don't stress if you don't get a first. Like, you don't need to prove to everyone, this isn't like it, you know, you prove that you deserve to be here just by grinding away at it, by putting up with all the corona measures and still turning up tutorials. That's how you prove you're meant to be here. So you're all doing that fabulously already. So there's no pressure on that in this sense. There honestly isn't.
Yeah, and your plagiarism stories also make me think of, this isn't plagiarism, but if you get an essay question that is similar to one of your old tutorial essays, it can be so tempting to be like, oh, I've already got a plan, like this. And it's like, you're not going to be answering the question, you're going to be answering a slightly different question, and your tutors are going to know that you're just using your old tutorial essay because they're the ones that read your tutorial essay. And so many times, you know, I've had a question where it's like, oh, I wrote an essay really similar to this during term time, and I have all that info in my head, so I could just write that essay again. And obviously you can use quite large components of it in terms of, you know, you still have the kind of core ideas, the books that you've read there, but don't just literally write the exact same essay, even if it's, you know, different in terms of the, you know, you're not like literally plagiarizing it. Don't just do, okay, I've got points 1, 2, 3, and 4 because that's what I did in my essay, and I've got these examples because that's what I did in my essay, and I've got these quotes I remember because that's what I did in my essay. It's like they aren't asking you the exact same question, so don't try and answer it the exact same way.
Sometimes I like deliberately avoid questions that I've seen before from tutorial essays because I've always had the experience that if I try and redo a tutorial essay, even if it's slightly different, it's just not as good as when you first write it. And like the questions that are on topics that you've not necessarily never seen before, but haven't really thought about maybe. So for example, in my actual mods, I'd never really sort of done much on gender in Iliad, and then I actually ended up answering that question because it's kind of something you haven't like done to death and you're not bored yourself. It's like kind of fun to write about a new topic, not fun, but like it just gives your brain something else to think about, and it's, I think, more useful to try new things. Also thinking about copying and pasting, like I remember being really worried about secondary literature, and this is maybe more specific to humanities in before collections. In my experience, it's not that important. I think this is probably maybe more specific to classics, as a focus on sort of knowing the Iliad well and knowing the text well, instead of trying to learn quotes from secondary literature, because I don't think I ever really did that. It's not like necessary. What they want to hear is your thoughts. And again, it's kind of the same thing about rehearsing what other people have said, or repeating what other people have said, or what you've said before is better to have like new and fresh ideas about a text that you've come up with yourself, instead of learning loads of things that other people have said about the text and then just like repeating them. So don't worry about like referencing secondary literature or anything, just like
on that, I would say for law it is slightly different. You do need to know, I mean, articles are how you make your essays, well, not how you make your essays great, but they contribute to that. But I would also say the key is balancing it with having something else to say, or having your own opinion on something. I would say it's always better to pick, especially for essays, it's always better to pick an essay you've got an opinion on, rather than one you've got 3 other people's opinion on, but you have never really thought about and don't really care about. If you can find one, you have something even to say about it, it's always going to make your essay a bit better. But I was also going to say, on the whole, not sharing notes with your friends, I think, well, as long as you both know you're not going to copy and paste from each other's notes, it's okay. But because the law students have shared notes before, and it's really useful if you've had a down week or whatever. But I would say something that is really useful at the moment is kind of a virtual study group. I know we're a bit close now, but something that would be useful in term as well is me and another lawyer, we always do kind of a virtual, we go through exam papers together and plan problem questions, just because it's really useful to hear what someone else has to say and to kind of find out if what you think is kind of around the right area. So we always use like Oxam and just go through some past papers, because that's really useful, and especially now when we can't really see anyone, it's really useful to do kind of a virtual thing. And then the last thing I was going to say is on the imposter syndrome. One, I think, like Gaby said, now is a time, well, whenever exams are around, it's kind of like almost, if you've got a massive fear of failure, it's your fear is confronting you. directly, and that is really, really difficult. Exams are always the hardest parts of my year. And before mods especially, I got really, really low. Didn't really leave my room at uni very much, and kind of just I just lost kind of my love of anything really. So I would say, I know this is collections, but especially as we come up to mods and prelims, I think it's just really important to reach out to people, because especially now, I did have people that forced me out of my room and that forced me to stop working, and that said, this is, I don't think you're doing well at all. I think you need to speak to someone. And then did listen to me as I spoke to them about it all the time. So I think it's just really, really important as exams come around, and to reach out to other people as well, to reach out to friends or to other people. I think that's I think it's really important, because I know for me, I didn't think I was good at law at all, and then I did exams and I did all right. So I was like, oh my god, I am actually good at law. But I would also say as well, sorry, I will finish in a minute, but another thing would be that I love the law students, but we can all get slightly competitive, or we all, at least, we're not competitive, but we all compare ourselves to each other, which I've always done. But especially when you've got a group where, like I say, we're not competing, but there's that undercurrent of competitiveness. I think it's really easy to start comparing yourself to everybody else and to think, but why did they pick me when I'm so different, or I'm not like them, or I have a different view? And then you need to realize that is exactly why they picked you, because you had that different perspective. Every person in there has something new to bring, a new view, a new opinion, a new way of doing something. Everyone was picked because you have that new perspective. And so there'll be, you might not be. So I definitely know I was not the best essay writer, because I hadn't written any essays for 2 years, but I know I have a different perspective from science that I bring to law, like a more analytical approach to things. So I think just like when you're feeling like, why would they pick me, just think, and why compared to other people, you've got to remember it's the exact differences to those other people that is the reason they picked you, which I found really useful.
Yeah, that's so important. And probably, stuff like this is something that Meg and I will touch on in our mental health chats that we're going to be having throughout the term. I'm just slipping that cheeky little plug in there. We're going to be having some little chats a bit like this. Potentially people can come along, because I think it's fun to do a Q&A. Again, we'll record it and we'll put it up and maybe become more of a podcast vibe, so people can listen to it. Might want to just listen to us rambling. My last closing point before I open up for Q&A is a story. It's a fable. It's not really a fable, it's my real life. So about why you shouldn't work yourself too hard for exams. I think Meg and I are both going through a bit of rubbish times at the same time, and as she probably remembers what happened when I worked myself too hard for prelims. So I thought I had to learn everything. Like, I had to know everything off the top of my head, as in, like, I was a walking encyclopedia of psychology. I barely slept. I was like, I know we're not all perfect, not that, I was fooling anyone, but as you can see from today, we've all made mistakes and we learn from them, as will you. You will make mistakes. But yeah, so I wasn't sleeping, I was barely eating. I also didn't realise I had glandular fever. So that was getting me down, and I was like to my mum, like, it's fine, I'm going to Beech, I'm going to get some Lemsip, I'm just going to crack on. I went to my friend's room because he was like, oh, like, how are your, come tell me how your revision's going. Like, I haven't seen you in literally 2 weeks at all. And I went to his room and I literally sat on his bed and passed out because I was so tired. And then I say, long story short, I ended up in hospital for a week because my glandular fever got so complicated because I just was not sleeping. Like, nothing was healing, nothing was helping myself. so don't do it. If you're ill, take time, email your tutor, they will understand. I should have just done that and been like, because I was ill for weeks, but I was like, it's just a really annoying cold. Don't be like, I just wanted to let you know I've been ill for 2 weeks and I'm slightly concerned, maybe I should get it checked out. Don't end up in hospital for a week. It's not worth it. And like you also like, you just get into this mindset of like, I'm gonna be the best, I'm gonna be so good, like I'm just gonna learn everything, and then this is how I'm gonna, it's not. You learn by like all of the taking care of yourself as well. That is how you do well. Like it literally is. You might think that like, you know, people are like, oh, you know, you have to stay up, you have to do, like, there's this phrase that I really hate, which is like, oh, if you want to be the 1%, right, that do really well, you have to do what the other 99% don't. It's bollocks, right? You do that just by being yourself and living your life and taking care of yourself. You do not do that by not sleeping, not eating, not socializing. So, you know, and this goes for term as well. This is all stuff, again, that we'll probably chat about more, but like, reach out to people, come to social evenings, like, put time aside in your evening to be like, I'm just gonna have a little Zoom with some of my friends from home, from uni, have a drink, have a cup of tea, whatever you want to do, but like take that time out, because it's hard at the moment to like take time out of your day, because you have to like diary in that you want to talk to your friends, which I know is like a hard mental switch to make, but do it, because it is good for your mental health. And if you have good mental health, you will do better, like full stop. That is absolutely a fact. So that's my last plug of do not work yourselves too hard. And yeah, obviously all of us have volunteered to be here and have had, you know, things to say. So feel free to email any of us, or, you know, Facebook message us if you have any more questions about subjects, anything like that. But yeah, any questions before the end? Anyone just stick a little reaction thing, or just unmute yourselves and have a chat?
Do you think, like, just with COVID, that if anything, something positive that might come out of it is that you don't have to feel so guilty for being like, I'm ill, I need to take time off? Because like tutors like will respond and be like, that's fine. Because I remember in first year I felt so guilty every time, like I had a fever of like a couple of weeks and I was like, I can't come to tutes, and I felt like, I don't know, I was doing something wrong. But like, you're an adult now, like you need to, like, if you're not going to be on like performing well in a tutorial, like rearrange it. I rearranged the tute from 8th week to, I just had it just now, and it was just so much better because I actually was paying attention, and like I did the work instead of like barely sleeping. Like there's no point if you are at that point where you like you're ill or you're just like completely shattered. Like like you're an adult. It's not like school where lessons are sort of planned and you can't like rearrange them anymore. And yeah, you shouldn't have to feel guilty for being ill or like anything like that, because that's totally normal. Like you take a day off work if you were ill, you know. So
no, and I think like collections is probably the first time that you learn to have that discussion with your tutor. Like I think that's I was totally scared of my tutor the whole of first term, even though he's a lovely man. But like I think collections, when we had the little chat, and like it just was very like open about like, okay, well you didn't do that very well. How are we going to work on it in a not in a threatening like, or else you're going to do badly, and like not in any way like that. It just feels like very much like you're on the same level with it, because like you've just done something very difficult. Like again, these are all exams at Oxford. They are meant to be very challenging, you know. Firstly, it's a very hard uni to get into. Then when you're here, it's a hard stuff to learn, and then the exams are hard. So like what I'm saying is it's all meant to be difficult. You're not meant to get it right. So like if you think that that's what's happening, good, because that's the whole point. That's how it's kind of like trial by fire, but like that's why we have all of us here to help you get through it. But it is the truth. Like if you feel like you're doing badly, so are we probably. Like I'm shitting myself with collections because I spent the whole of Christmas doing the lectures that I didn't do in Michaelmas because I was too bloody stressed about Corona. That's my update. So I'm currently still have like 6 lectures to do before Thursday on the content that we did in Michaelmas. I haven't revised. It's all right. You know, we'll do what we can for now. I emailed my tutor and I let him know. I was like, I just wanted to let you know, this is an update, not making an excuse, but just updating you on the situ. Not feeling fab about them. Felt like Michaelmas was very stressful. We're like, you know, we had the whole Liddell epicenter occasion. took about 2 weeks out of my life, probably off my lifespan as well. Like that happened, and again, I told him about it at the time in like a very chill way, like just on Teams. I was like, oh my god, it's actually really, really tough to deal with mentally. And he was like, cool, I'll take it into account. So then now I let him know, and he was like, it's all right, just do your best, and then we'll see, and then you can actually revise for your exams that count towards something. So again, like no one's perfect, like no one's doing everything right, so don't feel like you have to, because no one is. And that's what I think to be.
I think term as well can sometimes, and especially the run up to exams, can sometimes feel a bit, I always describe it as a bit like you're just on a train that's just going, getting faster and faster and faster, so and you can't get off it. You just feel like there's no way to get off it, and no one else is on it either, and like you feel like there's the end of a cliff and you're just going to go off it. That's how exams always feel for me. But what you've got to remember is you're in, I know it doesn't feel like it, but you're in control of the train. You know, you can get off the train, you can slow it down. We love a metaphor. And I would say what it feels like is one thing my tutor said when I was speaking to her about exams, because I went to speak to her because I was like, I don't know I'm going to do this, is she was like, forget the feeling of being prepared for an exam, because you will never feel it again. There will always be more you can do, more you can revise, more you can read, more exam questions you can practice, more cases that there are just thousands out there. And they all have some value, but at the end of the day, she was like, you're never going to be able to read it all, and you are never going to feel prepared, which is something I was like, what? But how? Because at A level, everything, I knew pretty much everything not everything, but a lot of it was easier to digest all the information, and there wasn't that sheer amount of stuff, because it felt like it was very much, there was a mark scheme, there was a syllabus, and they couldn't do anything else. With this, it's completely different. There is just so much out there. So that's what I would say. Just forget the feeling of being prepared, become comfortable with being unprepared, because that's the best it's going to get. And when you get that uncomfortable, which is what I got with my last collection, I was not prepared, not at all. And I apart from the day before, I just wasn't too stressed, because I knew that it was just a collection and I was never going to be as prepared as I want to be for it. So
no, that's such a good point, because you're like, oh, what if I'd studied 4 hours every morning and 4 hours every afternoon, and then I had all of the flashcards, and like I knew you won't. No, like literally no one does. Even the people who do like the best in their year, they don't either. They probably just were lucky and got questions they were familiar with, maybe, and they just suddenly had a flash of inspiration, had a banging essay plan. Like that's literally what it is. So that's a very, very useful point. Do not feel like we're going to be prepared.
And I think what you said about tutors, I think is really key. And I think the one thing that if I could tell every single person at Oxford something, it would be that your tutors are people. They aren't teachers like they were in secondary school in sixth form, where they've got 30 people in a class and their only job is to make sure you pass this exam, whether it be GCSEs, A levels, or IB, or whatever. They are people that you can talk to, that you can say, oh, I'm worried about something, or if you're revising something and you need some help on it, or if you've even just got a question. I emailed my tutor last week because I was like, oh, I'm doing a bit of revision and I've just read about this new thing. Do you think I should mention it in an essay or not if it comes up? And he was like, oh, I probably wouldn't, but wait, talk to me a bit about it. Like, they are people, but at the same time, like, I think they're quite keen for you to do some work, because they kind of don't want to feel like they're being insulted by you just not bothering. And so I think it's just very important to remember that you can talk to them. They are here to make sure that you survive the next 3 to 4 years. They aren't there to punish you or to force you to get a first in every exam you ever do. And because they have so few students that they're looking after, they really can give you the time that you would need in a way that you couldn't at sixth form or secondary school.
Definitely. Like, I'd say, like, one of the things that I've learned is let your tutors know what's going on. Like, even if it's after the collection and you say like, hey, so I wasn't feeling great, or like, I know it might not reflect it, but I did work a lot, or I didn't work a lot, like I didn't have time to revise, I didn't have motivation, like tell them what's happening. I had like a really rough time for my mods term. Like, I had like personal stuff going on, and I just told my tutors and sort of let them know what was happening. And so that they just so that they're aware, like it just helps them to know what's going on in your life, like why you're not answering your emails if you're not, or like why you're like kind of, you know, like being like, oh, I'll send you my essay now, and I'll send you my essay, like just so they just need to know, like communication, especially now if they can't see you, is really helpful just to know what's going on if you're like struggling with like motivation at home. I don't know, I'm an oversharer by nature, but it helped to tell Constanza like what was going on in my life so that she just knew, because it was affecting my work. And so like she's really great at pastoral stuff. So she's really helpful for that. I had another point, but I don't remember what it was now.
Just a plug for Constanza there, because she's amazing, and she's also the college harassment officer. So spread the word. I'm going to start doing, you know, I add her into my emails actually. But she's really great to talk to you about that kind of stuff. So we're really plugging her as a welfare team this term. So I recommend talking to her. And yeah, your tutor's also there for your pastoral care. So like, just be like, bro, it's not happening. Like,
yeah,
it's happening. You know, if it's something that's happening like every week, you're like, oh my God, I'm too overwhelmed. That's, again, not saying there's a problem with you, but then maybe you need to sit down with your tutor and be like, am I doing too many things? Like, I had that in Hilary of first year. I was like, I was doing like, I don't even know, like 50 million things at the same time. And then my tutor was like, maybe we don't do that. Like, maybe that's just a good idea to just, you know, stop. And I was like, oh, no, I have to do everything and all of the societies. And like, and then we, you know, I stopped doing a couple of things, still had plenty of stuff to be getting on with, still was getting the Oxford experience, but I wasn't dying, and that's so much better. And just gonna wrap up, but when you do your collections, the good thing about being at home is you can put some music on, get yourself in an environment where you feel like you work best. Like, I work best with a bit of like, you know, external stimulation, so I like a bit of music on, like a bit of background noise. For me, that's great. So I would do that. Get a cup of tea, right? You can get comfortable. Snacks, comfy clothes, your pajamas if you want, or not. Like, I like getting ready because it makes me feel like, I don't know, like pro and ready to go. But otherwise, if you don't like, sit in your bed if you want to. Do like whatever makes you feel like you work best. Take time before, just sit down, make yourself comfortable. Maybe sit there and do something else. Read a book so you're like ready. And you know, hydrate, eat well, sleep lots the night before, and then like just give it a good go. And the same goes for the rest of this term, as we'll be giving you multiple tips on. We're getting some pros in as well that you know, the welfare team and some other committee members can be doing little like panel discussions with, about like motivation, working from home, how not to procrastinate, loads of bits and bobs, just so you have all the tools that you need. So that's all coming, but for now it's just collections. You'll be fine however you do, well, medium, not so well. Like, there's a solution for everything. And please reach out to us if you have any questions or just want to chat. We're all very chatty. So
I was also going to say that if you have any subject specific questions about that, we, you know, if we aren't one of your 5 subjects, go talk to the years above, because as you said, I was talking for the last hour, people love talking about their collections experiences. And I'm sure that whether it be stuff about, oh, you know, how much is this tutor going to care, or what kind of exam questions should I answer for this topic, or any kind of stuff like that, go talk to the years above. I'm sure they will happily answer all of your questions. But obviously, if you do one of the subjects that we do, you know, feel free to ask whenever as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's, thank you to all of my lovely, we all did the same thing, but I'm going to say my lovely helpers, because that's just a lovely phrase. And thank you to all of you guys for sitting through. Like, we've had a couple of people dropping out as it's got a bit long. But thank you for staying, you dedicated souls, and listening to us ramble. I'm sure it will provide you with so much help. Some of you I will see at circuits this evening, because whoever misses circuits on a Monday, I don't know. If you are, you're missing out so much. And good luck. Have a great week. Look at it positively. And we all love you and we're all here for you. So
Also, before, I'm just going to paste in the chat the link to the Corpus website with subject ambassadors. So if
Yeah.
you want, that's the person who's in charge of your subject for outreach, and they'll be happy to point you to anyone in an older year.
yeah, amazing. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks. Good luck. It will be over by the weekend.
Good
Yeah.
luck.
Oh, and look out for a games night after collections. To check
Hey.
out. So,
Woo.
look forward to that.
Bye guys.
Bye.